Welcome to Scandal Water,
where we cover the stories that have captivated the entertainment world.
I'm Candy, a longtime educator and community theater actress.
And I'm Ashley, a writer and co-founder of a local theater group.
We're two friends who share a love of entertainment.
From true crime docuseries, to blockbuster movies, to classic TV, to Broadway shows, and everything in between.
Each week, I share a compelling story related to pop culture.
And I chime in using my trivia junkie brain.
We stick to the facts until it's time to settle into our armchairs at the end.
Then we're simply two women with a strong cup of tea and even stronger opinions.
We're Scandal Water.
And if this sounds like your cup of tea,
follow the show on your favorite podcast app or the Scandal Water Podcast YouTube channel.
Oh, it's that time of day. Tune in and hear what the ladies say. It's time to bend your ear when the silver screen appears. Stories about the stage and screen and everything in between. So come on and join the fun. The curtain opens in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Ashley.
hello, Candy.
Here we are, ready to record another, I think, fascinating episode for our theme, Order in the Court. But you know, just to kind of take our friends behind the scenes, it's interesting. Here we are recording for February, but in real life,
Yeah.
we are just a day ahead of like Snowmageddon.
I know, we're on the cusp.
It's all over the news.
It's kind of scary.
It's all over the news. In fact, I just got a message that my workplace is already called off work.
I think
the
that's
next
smart.
2 or 3 days.
So we don't know what's going to happen, but right now it is forecast for, in our area, it could be up to 18 inches of snow. Mm-hmm. And we are in northern Kentucky, and we are not used to this.
No, we are not.
So.
And all the grocery store shelves are ransacked. People are hoarding. They're getting themselves ready.
Yes.
And I mean, the biggest thing that I worry about, let's just keep that power on.
Yes.
Let's keep the power on.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, here we are, though. It's a lovely
In the
day.
future.
Yes. It looks...
We're in the past, but also the future.
Right. Absolutely. And just as a reminder, we told you this last week, but the reason we chose our theme is because...
I'm going to jury duty.
Yes, you are. And so we are talking today about someone who is actually very closely associated with courtroom dramas. And by the time this comes out, Ashley, you might be getting to observe your own courtroom drama.
I know. The first drama is going to be getting there. What is today? The 23rd?
Yes.
Right. Today's the 23rd, and my orientation is not till the 28th, which is next Thursday. So hopefully I'll be able to get to it.
Right.
And I feel good because all of February is going to be done before I even enter this courtroom. So there's no chance of me talking about anything that I'm getting ready to do.
Yes, absolutely. All right, well, let's jump in. I'm going to start by playing a clip from a 2022 Today Show episode. This is a clip that comes from the beginning of an interview that Willie Geist is leading with author John Grisham.
Ooh.
And you're going to hear the introduction that Willie offers as a lead-in to that interview.
In the 30 or so years since leaving the law for writing, Grisham has become, quite simply, one of the most widely read authors in human history. He has sold an astounding 350 million books. That is more than the number of albums the Beatles, Elvis, or Michael Jackson have sold. That run includes 47 consecutive #1 bestsellers printed in 50 different languages. Grisham wakes up every January 1st and begins a new book with a deadline of July 1st, writing every day from 7 in the morning until noon.
Pretty impressive, isn't it?
I'm already astounded.
And that data...
He said human history. I was like, what other history, Willie Geist? Like the animals can't outsell him when they write their books. But no, I know what he was going for. But that is astounding.
And it's outdated. That was 4 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
It's more impressive now. In fact, just to give you a few more achievements...
What do you say, 47 #1 hits in a row?
Yeah, it's actually more like 51 now. Yeah. Let me just share with you a couple more achievements that are so recent, just within the last few years. This past fall, The Rainmaker became the USA Network's most watched freshman series in 7 years. It's already been renewed for season 2, which is slated to air in 2026. And that series is based on John Grisham's 1995 book that had the same title.
Yeah.
Did you remember reading that back
I
in the day?
didn't read it, but I remember the film with Matt Damon and Danny DeVito.
Yes,
Okay.
and Claire Danes.
Claire Danes,
Yes, I rewatched it just because actually I watched the TV series and then became interested in watching the movie. But John Grisham serves as a producer for that show. And I just now checked the New York Times bestseller list. John Grisham's latest book, The Widow, is still on it. After 13 weeks, it debuted. Within its first week, it was on the #1 spot because that's what happens with his books.
Wow.
And we go all the way back to 1989, which is when his first novel came out. So this means that he has been writing for approximately 37 years, something like 60 books now. And one of the other reasons we wanted to cover him, other than the fact that he is an amazing author of legal thrillers, this is his birthday week.
Aww.
At the time that this comes out, he will have just turned 71. His birthday is February 8th. And here he is, after all this time writing, still at the top of the charts, appealing to audiences. Again, Willie said 47 bestsellers. I see it in my notes. It's now 51 bestsellers. And he also is widely known by the title, The Master of the Legal Thriller.
Wow.
So for all of these reasons, he
Yeah.
seemed like the perfect
He
choice.
is the perfect choice.
Right.
We thought he was the perfect choice, and now based on your research, this was perfect. Would you be so intimidated though by your own self? Would you wake up on January 1st and go, phew, I got to do it again? At some point, I'd almost want a book to tank just so there would be like, phew, okay, now there's not so much pressure. But 51 in a row?
It's amazing.
Maybe I'm just neurotic. He
Well,
probably loves it, but wow.
He's very confident, but he's
Yeah.
also, I got to watch several of his interviews, and I'm talking some of them were like an hour and a half long. I feel like I know him a little bit
Yeah.
now, and he's very likable. He comes across as really down to earth, but also very accomplished and very confident.
Yeah.
I don't think it phases him a bit. In
Yeah.
fact, by the time he starts that new book on January 1st, he's already outlined it and been thinking about it for months. He's ready to get the old one, like out of his way because
Right.
he's moving on. Wow. Yeah, he's a
Wow.
machine.
I cannot fathom that. I wrote a play that was pretty well received last year, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
already like, I don't know what to do now. It's like, what do I do? How do I follow this up?
Well, I will tell you, I found it fascinating hearing about his process. So this is a nice little teaser for
Okay.
that. We are going to come back and we are going to talk more about how he does pull this off. So
Okay,
that's
good.
coming
That'll
a little
be good
bit
advice
later.
for me.
But for right now, I just wanted to do as I always do. I want to ask you, what is your familiarity with John Grisham or his works?
Shockingly, not a whole lot.
Really?
Yes. As much as I love legal thrillers, as much as I love this whole world, I don't know that I have fully read one of his books.
Really?
I really don't know that I have. I may have back in my 20s. I was reading a lot of stuff, so I don't want to say never. And I know that my mom went through a period where she was reading a lot of his stuff, and so I may have read.
Right.
I think I did. I think I have read at least one book of his, and it was extremely good. But that might be it. I've seen the movies, but not read a lot of the work.
I really got caught up in his works back in those early days when he was in that cycle of writing a best-selling book and then it was almost immediately turned into a movie. I was on those. I mean, I remember reading The Firm, The Client, Rainmaker.
yes.
I mean, so many of those early books, and I thought they were fantastic. Now, I will say I've kind of fallen off over the years, partly because
Life is busy.
life is busy, and with our podcast,
Yeah.
I mean, I spend almost all my reading time researching now.
I know. We've talked
Yeah.
about that, how much
Yeah.
having our own podcast has taken away from our enjoyment of other people's work because we have to get so much of the work done for our own podcast.
Right. But I was really pleased doing this topic, focusing on John Grisham actually kind of got me back into that,
Yeah.
that nostalgic feeling, I think, because like I said, I watched the TV series Rainmaker, which Kirk enjoyed. He watched it with me. We both found it enjoyable. And then, as I said, that sent me back to watch the original Rainmaker movie. And anyway, I'm kind of back in that world now. And he's a really impressive writer. He just
Yeah.
is. I'm now wanting to read one of his newer books. I want to read The Widow.
I feel like he's in the camp with Michael Crichton, where they're just so good at their craft that it's just unbelievable.
Right. Well, since I've mentioned The Rainmaker a few different times, let me just add this one little tidbit that goes along with that. I saw in a 2015 interview for Entertainment Weekly that John Grisham named The Rainmaker, the original 1997 movie, as his pick for the best adaptation of one of his novels.
The movie? He liked
the movie,
oh, okay,
yes.
okay.
And the reason he gave was, I'm sure he had other reasons, but here's the quote that I, picked up. He said, Francis Ford Coppola wrote and directed the movie, and he was determined to stick to the novel. So he felt like it really honored the original work.
Because sometimes they'll change the ending. I never understand that.
Well, I mean, John Grisham is one who's pretty hands-off. When he turns it over, he's like, okay, it's up to you now.
Yeah.
And he just kind of accepts what they do with it.
Wow.
And I know a lot of authors are like that. But, well, here are a few fast facts before we get into talking about his life, because this is something, you and I talked about this. In our early days with the podcasting, we would often do what we called biographies, where we really kind of walk through the life of someone. This is a little bit more of that. This is a bit of a biography. We're going to trace a little bit of his career path.
To this point, because he is still living and writing.
Absolutely. Going strong.
Yes.
Going strong. But I thought before we jump into all that, we would just talk about a few fast facts. So, in terms of box office, The Firm is the most successful film adaptation of one of his works. And number 2, in case you associate John Grisham only with legal thrillers, you might be surprised to learn that Christmas with the Cranks, that 2004 movie, is based on his book, Skipping
Really?
Christmas.
Oh, that's
Have
cute.
you seen the movie?
Is that the one with Tim Allen and Jamie Lee Curtis?
Absolutely.
I think so.
It didn't get great reviews,
Okay.
but I want to say that it's one that I think it's actually done better in recent years. It's kind of become one of those
Once Netflix
Christmas
comes out,
movies that people watch and it grows on them. Yeah, but again, John Grisham wrote that book. Between the years of 2011 to 2020, John Grisham published a 7-book series for middle grade students called Theodore Boone, Kid Lawyer.
What? Oh, that's adorable. Like Doogie Howser.
Kind of, yeah. In John's words, it was about a, quote, 13-year-old kid who thinks he's a lawyer because both his parents are lawyers, and he gets in all kinds of trouble because he's always giving legal advice to his friends, and it's not always good advice. So we'll kind of come back and talk about that a little bit later as well. But let's move on to number 4. As a former lawyer who is now a famous, successful writer, John Grisham says he gets sued all the time.
Stop.
Oh, no. He talked about it in an interview. He said it's just like a way of life for him now. All the time he
Is
gets
it from
sued.
where he writes about things and then people think it's about them and they sue him?
Or people will try to claim that he's pulled something from their work or their ideas. He said 1 lawsuit per book is a pretty good average.
Wow.
Yeah, he has to deal with that all the
man,
time.
he has to be confident. I could never survive.
I would hate it.
I would hate it.
Hate it. Speaking of lawsuits, our last fast fact here. John Grisham is part of a large group of authors that includes George R.R. Martin and David Baldacci that is suing OpenAI, the author of ChatGPT, for copyright infringement.
Oh.
The suit was organized by the Authors Guild, and they alleged that the AI program using their copyrighted work without permission is, quote, systematic theft on a mass scale, end quote. This past October, they had a win when the judge dismissed OpenAI's motion to dismiss the claims made by the authors. So,
Good for them.
yeah, I did not do a deep dive on this, but I think like one of the issues is they would take, in order to kind of get their program regulated, I guess you would call it, they calibrated maybe, they would take these works that were out there and feed them into the system.
Yep.
And these are some of those authors whose works were being used without their permission. Yeah. All right. Well, we're ready to talk about John's life. He was born, as we've already said, February 8th. The year was 1955 in Jonesboro, Arkansas, the second of 5 kids. According to his bio on the Academy of Achievement website, quote, John's father, a cotton farmer and itinerant construction worker, moved the family frequently from town to town throughout the Deep South, settling in South Haven, Mississippi in 1967. Although his parents lacked formal education, his mother encouraged him to read and insisted that he prepare himself for college.
Good for her.
Yeah. He was always a huge sports fan, baseball being his favorite
Number
sport.
1.
From an early age, he was all about it. He has spoken in several interviews about playing sandlot baseball during his childhood, and he also has spoken about following his family's tradition of being a huge St. Louis Cardinals fan. So in high school, John actually played 3 sports, football, basketball, and baseball, but his dream was to become a pro baseball player.
Aw.
Unfortunately, things did not go as
Did he
well
get
as he'd
injured?
hoped. Yeah, well, he said he just wasn't quite as good as they wanted him
Yeah,
to be.
yeah.
he at some point decided it wasn't going to work, and he decided to focus more on his studies. John ended up attending 3 different colleges for his undergrad, graduating from Mississippi State in 1977 with a degree in accounting.
Interesting.
But then he went on to receive his law degree from Ole Miss in 1981. That same year, John married Renee Jones and opened his own law practice in South Haven, Mississippi, where he focused on criminal defense and personal injury litigation.
You said her name with a smile, so are they still married?
They are.
Okay.
The reason I smiled is because I like her.
Oh, good.
We're going to come back and talk about the influence she's had on
good.
his career.
Yeah, I could tell you liked her.
Renee seems like a sassy woman, is what I'm
Awesome.
going to say. All right. Well, in 1983, the Grishams had their first child, a son they named Ty. And I think his full name is Tyler, but they all call him Ty. And it was also in 1983 that John ran for the office of state representative in Mississippi's 7th District and won.
Good.
Yeah, he would end up serving in the House of Representatives until 1990.
What? So he's writing books and serving in the House of Representatives?
And a lawyer. Well, he has not started writing yet, though.
Oh, when did his career in writing start?
Well,
Okay, you'll
we're
tell
about
me.
to talk about
Okay, you'll
that
tell me.
because it's actually, I think, fascinating.
Okay.
In 1984, John had an experience that would end up having a profound impact on his life, although he tells in interviews that, he would have never guessed. In fact, to him, it was a disturbing incident. So what happened was he was at the courthouse one day and he had some time on his hands. As a lawyer, sometimes when they had time on their hands, they would just go check out some other trial that was underway. They'd just go watch other people present their cases, whether
That's a
they
good
were
way to learn.
Right. Or sometimes you're just interested in the case.
Okay.
So this particular day, it was something really disturbing that was being talked about. It was a very sad and sensational case. And what was going to happen this particular day was they had a 12-year-old girl who was going to give her testimony regarding a brutal sex assault and violent attack that she had suffered at the hands of a paroled convict.
Oh.
Speaking with a host of Talking Volumes this past October, John shared that the judge did something that he had never seen occur before, and he said he's never seen it since. That judge cleared the courtroom except for the jury and any other people directly involved in the case. Now, John said because of his status as a member of the bar and a lawyer who practiced there, he was allowed to stay, commenting that as he was listening, he kind of wished he hadn't because he said it was just so
Horrifying.
Yes, he said it was so disturbing, so upsetting. What this poor child had been through was absolutely horrific. And the fact that she was having to share it with this room full of adults, every bit of it was just absolutely awful. So I'm going to play just a tiny piece of John's interview where he explains a bit more of what happened.
And so she testified for about an hour. At times she was very brave. At times she was very fragile. She took us through every emotion you can imagine, from love, hatred, pure hatred, revenge. It was so dramatic. And at times she broke down. There were times there was not a dry eye in the courtroom. You can imagine the jurors crying. The judge was hiding his face. I was hiding my face. The only person who never shed a tear was a defendant who never showed any remorse. It was that powerful. And the feeling of hatred and revenge the testimony was awful. Finally, she could not continue. And we'd heard enough. And the judge said, okay, let's have a recess. And as soon as he banged the gavel, they took the jury out, and I fled to get out of the courtroom. I was so emotionally drained. And I ran down the back stairs, the back door, and went to my car. And I got to my car, I left my briefcase in the courtroom. So I had to go back in, and I went up the back stairs, the back door, through the side door that we knew about. And I walked down the courtroom, and there was a defendant sitting there, all by himself, with a deputy close by. There was nobody else around. He was being watched. And I walked by him, and I thought to myself, God, had that been my daughter, I would get my revenge right now. And I would look at that same jury, and I'd say, what are you going to do to me? What are you going to do with me now that I've done something that you all want to do? It was that raw. It was that emotional.
So I cut that off, but John went on to say that that experience was so powerful, so upsetting and moving to him, he could not get it out of his mind. In particular, what stuck with him was that image, that idea of a father getting revenge and being justified in getting revenge. And that, of course, is what gave him the idea for this novel, which would turn into A Time to Kill.
I have seen that film because when you were describing this, I thought, wait a minute, this sounds familiar.
Absolutely. So John started writing at 30 years of age, never having written before. No training in writing.
My goodness.
Yeah, in fact, he would say in high school, college, he did not like to write. Although you have to. As a lawyer, you have to write.
You have to do a
right?
lot of writing.
But an article in the Clarion Ledger said he wrote his first book by hand on legal pads. And it took
Not
him...
cocktail napkins?
It took him 3 years to finish A Time to Kill, by which point he had a second child. The Grisham's daughter, Shay, was born in 1986. But after finishing the book, it took 2 more years to get it published. Now, he's still he's going on with his law, his law practice through all this. In fact, he's finding the time to write before he's going to work.
That's
and
great.
just working around his job.
That's just
and
great.
working around his, personal responsibilities as a dad and a husband. But he said his wife supported him all along, of course. John received something like 28 rejections across...
that's so encouraging. Not for him in the moment, but like for me right now.
Yeah. But when you consider literary agencies as well as publishing companies,
Sure.
right? But anyway, when the book finally did come out in 1989, it was a total flop, to use John's words.
really?
Oh, yeah. He said they only printed 5,000 copies. He said he couldn't give them away. In fact, I'll go ahead and share this other little story. In a different interview, he said that he bought 1,000 of them himself. And it was so cute the way he told it. He was like, I got elected, to the legislature. I have friends, right? I'm a lawyer. I live in this small town. Surely my friends would come out and buy my books. And he said that he took his 1,000 copies. I think he got, if I remember correctly, the local library to let him use it for this event. He said at the end of that night, he still had something like 882 of those copies left.
John.
Yeah, so he could not give them away. But he was already now in the habit of writing, and he already had another idea that his wife Renee thought was very engaging. So he kept on writing.
Good for you, John.
And his second book, The Firm, was published 18 months later in 1991.
He's getting faster.
And things were very different this time. Oh, yeah. In fact, there was a bidding war in Hollywood to acquire the film rights before the book was even published.
How in the world do you get from nothing to something?
Somehow the word got out. And I did not find how that happened, but the word got out.
Okay.
Unlike what happened with his first book, John Grisham said with The Firm, things literally changed overnight. Not only did he receive a huge amount of money for the movie deal, but when the book came out, it hit #1 on the bestsellers list, and it stayed there for 47 weeks. And then word got out that the author of The Firm had a previous novel,
Aha!
and now A Time to Kill hit #1 too. Now, somewhere around this time is when John decided, oh yeah, he was going to quit his job as a lawyer. He was going to put politics behind him. He was going to be a full-time writer.
That is very brave to say, second book. Yeah, I'm doing it.
Yeah, but I think he pulled in some big money, and he was getting a lot of attention.
So I don't know if you can hear this, so we're taking a little break. One of my new kittens, Redford, named for Robert Redford, has decided during his nap time he wants to be held like a little baby.
And he is cuddled up in your arms like a little baby.
And so you guys are going to hear him purring as Candy is talking.
Like a little motor over there.
Yes, he's making air biscuits.
Very cute. Very
Hey,
cute.
you're our first new podcat.
Oh,
Hey, Bubby. Okay, let's keep
he's
listening
already
to
a
John.
star. Well, back into this. It was while John Grisham was on a book tour for one of those early books that he heard what he considers to be the best professional advice he's ever received. A young employee who worked for one of the big book chains, working with him, just happened to comment in passing that something to the effect of the big guys come out every year, meaning that
keep
the
going.
big name authors publish every year. John said, quote, I heard that loud and clear. At the time, I was about halfway through the Pelican Brief and had no idea when it would be finished or published. But I went home, I locked myself away for 60 days and finished the book.
I've also seen that movie. Okay.
Yeah, very good. It was published a year after The Firm. 1 year after that, I published The Client. So from that point on.
And just think, it was a young bookstore employee, right? That's what you said?
Yes, who just happened to say, yeah, this is what the big ones do.
He said, okay.
I'm going to be a big one.
Wow.
I can do that. So that's what established his, I'm going to put out a book every single year. And then this man who's very self-disciplined decided, I'll have a routine. And we're still going to come back and talk about that process, by the way. But in short, his strategy paid off big time, because after the incredible success of his first movie adaptation, The Firm, starring Tom Cruise, that came out in 1993,
Which would be the year after A Few Good Men.
Yes. Those early years for John Grisham seemed like a nonstop cycle of best-selling book, followed by movie version, followed by the next best-selling book.
Wow.
Just to give you an idea, here are the books John Grisham wrote just in his first 10 years as an author, and the movies that came out of that.
Okay.
I'm breaking this up. Here are the books.
Okay.
And then I'm going to read the list of the movies.
Gotcha.
Okay. So books: 1989, A Time to Kill; 91, The Firm; 92, The Pelican Brief; 93, The Client; 94, The Chamber; 95, The Rainmaker; 96, Runaway Jury;
I've seen that
97, The Partner; 98, The Street Lawyer; 99, The Testament; 2000, The Brethren. Now the movies: 93, The Firm; 93, The Pelican Brief; 94, The Client; 96, The Chamber; 96, A Time to Kill; 97, The Rainmaker; 2003, The Runaway Jury. And TV that came out of those first 10 years of books. In 95 to 96, there was a season of The Client. 2003, there was a pilot for The Street Lawyer that I don't believe got picked up. 2011 to 2012 is when there was a season of The Firm. And 2025 is when we had the season of The Rainmaker that I've been mentioning several times and has now been picked up for season 2. So his first 10 years of books produced all of that in terms of film and TV.
Wow. I bet that he could just live comfortably with just that.
Absolutely. That would have done him for the rest of his life if he had decided he was done, which clearly
He's not.
He was not. The film for A Time to Kill was special to John. He said, this is what we mentioned before, he was fairly hands-off about most of his movie adaptations, but he cared about A Time to Kill.
Yeah, it's your first one.
Yeah, because he had worked so hard. So John retained the right to veto casting when it came to the character of Jack Brigance. Yeah, who John said was actually pretty autobiographical in terms of the character's personality and motivations. You know, he really based a lot of it on his own self and his own feelings.
That would make sense. Being your first novel, he's going to go from his own perspective.
Yeah. So here's how it happened, according to interviews given by Matthew McConaughey and John Grisham. Matthew said that he had an audition lined up for a small part in the film, but that while he was there, he made a point to express his interest in the lead role to Joel Schumacher, the director. He said Joel laughed at him, but ended up agreeing to let him audition for it. But this is Matthew talking still. Matthew said that in the meantime, Sandra Bullock, who'd already been cast for the movie, she suddenly got this huge boost in her star power when her movie, While You Were Sleeping, suddenly became a hit. And that actually worked out perfectly for Matthew McConaughey, because he said that it meant there was less pressure for them to have to cast a big name star, because they already had Sandra. They had Sandra. So now he felt like they were more open to considering other people for the character of Jake.
And it's hard to believe that Matthew was not a big star at the time, because this made him.
This did make him, absolutely. So Matthew filmed his audition with Joel still telling him the whole time, now don't be disappointed, you know, you're probably not going to get this, you don't have a chance. But now John steps in. I'm going to fill in with what he said in his interview. He recalled receiving Matthew McConaughey's audition tape via FedEx, because it was back when, you couldn't do it digitally.
Yeah.
And he said that he and Renee watched that tape together, and he remembers distinctly seeing Matthew play Jake Brigance. John said that Matthew had a great accent. He was charismatic. He looked great. He hit every mark. And he said, as for Renee's reaction, John recalled it was something to the effect of, I think I'm in love with him. So the rest, of course, is history.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's where we're going to take a break, and we'll pick back up when we return.
We love including listener voices in our episodes, and we're always looking for more. So tell us, where do you sip your scandal water? Do you catch up on the tea while folding your laundry, sitting at your work desk, Working out at the gym? Let us know by sending in your shout out, telling us your first name, your hometown, and where you are or what you're doing when you're listening to Scandal Water. And you just might hear a voice you recognize starting one of our upcoming episodes. Email your audio clip to scandalwaterpodcast@gmail.com. The voice memo app on your phone will work just fine. Cheers!
And we are back. And finally ready to talk about John Grisham's writing process.
Yes, I'm excited about this.
Well, I'm going to start by letting you hear a little bit from him. All right, here we go.
Because you have to love them to finish them. You have to love a story, to create it, to outline it, to plan it, and to write 100,000 words, which is 500 pages in a span of 6 months. I mean, that sounds fast, but I write 1,000 words a day.
Does sound fast.
Yeah, but it's not. To me, it's a leisurely pace. Several hours in the morning. 1,000 words a day is not a big stretch for fiction.
True.
Non-fiction is a far different matter. But by the time I get to the end of it, I've edited, I've written it, I've changed, made all the changes. I take my wife's edits. I send the book to New York to my agent. He goes through it, and I still listen to people. I still listen to people, 3 or 4 people I'm very close to, who say, this is good, this is bad, whatever. I listen to them. And that's a mistake a lot of big writers make. They reach a point where they don't want to be edited. Mm-hmm. They don't want to make changes, and you can tell it.
All right, I have more to share about this, but I want to get your reaction to that first.
Well, first, I think it's I love that he's passionate about storytelling and open to that he cares enough about the craft that he doesn't think that he's the be all end all.
Yes.
But I also love that he says, I take my wife's edits.
I know. She's his first reader.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I found more than one place, but one of the sources that I found was John's author page on the Penguin Random House website, where he actually outlines his writing process.
Yes,
they
sounds
give
like
a
he's an
lot of
outliner.
information. So here's a little bit more about this just to flesh it out. So he is very, very structured. So John is very intentional about making sure that he has an environment conducive to writing. Now, I don't know that this has always been this way, but for at least a large chunk of time, his writing spot was a cabin on his property in Virginia, where he makes a point whenever he writes, wherever he writes, he removes all distractions. He's not going to have music, phones, social media, access, nothing like that. He also said in one interview that he likes to stick to what works. So he will try to use the same computer. He will drink out of the same coffee cup. And of course, always tries to be in that same room. So he definitely likes routines and structure.
Well, he's kind of Pavloving his brain to say, when I do this, this, and this means writing.
Yes, he's conditioning himself. Exactly. We've mentioned the outlining. He says that he doesn't just outline so that he gets the big picture of the book. He also outlines every chapter. His quote was, "If you always know where you're going, it's hard to get lost."
Right.
He wants to know every chapter is going to flow the way it should and contain what should be there. He writes 5 days a week. He's already said, you heard him in the clip, he does it in the mornings. His goal, again, about 1,000 words, although he sometimes will go over. He shared in an interview on CBS Mornings that he has 2 cups of strong coffee with his wife, Renee, every morning between 6 to 7 a.m., and then heads off with his 3rd cup of coffee to start writing.
Wow, that's a lot of coffee.
Yeah, his most productive time is between 7 to 10 a.m., although he will sometimes go longer if he's in the flow. But he made a point of saying, you need to be fresh. You do your best writing when you're fresh, and at some point, that's it. He's done for the day. He's going to go play golf. He's going to go on to some other activity, go take a walk. He doesn't want to write when he's not in that mindset where it's going to be quality work. And we've already said this as well, but the final point is that he begins a new book on January 1st of every year with the goal of finishing it by July 1st. This gives him then several months for rewrites and edits before the end of the year.
Yeah, so it's not like he's done in July and he has 6 months off.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
That's just a rough draft.
Yeah, but John has said that by the time he gets to the point of making the revisions, he is tired of that book.
I
He
bet.
is ready to move on. In fact, he says his mind is already on that next book.
Wow.
When he's finishing up the previous one.
Wow.
Now, let's go back to Renee. I love this. In many interviews, he has said that Renee is a trusted feedback partner. She's his first reader. She has played such a large role in his success as an author. And according to John, Renee is as helpful when he's bouncing around a new idea for a book as she is when she's giving feedback to something he's already, tried to put on paper. In one interview, he said, quote, "She has an uncanny ability to spot a good story. I tend to think that almost anything will work. Once I start writing, she is merciless as the chapters pour forth." He jokes about her using the big red pen and making these huge notes. And he says, I don't really like it when she gets snarky, but yeah. But here's a story that illustrates how much he values her opinion. Okay, this relates to the book that is currently on the bestseller list, The Widow. John said that he had come up with what he thought was a very clever, somewhat quirky ending for that book. And then he gave it to Renee. She was his first reader, and she told him, it's not going to work.
Oh.
And so he's such a good storyteller. In his interview, he kind of, he's like, okay, I'll show her. I'm going to send it to my agent, see what he says. He sent it off to his agent, his publishers, and got the feedback back. No, it's not going to work. And so in a People magazine article, John said, "I took their advice, as I always do when they gang up against me. I can't argue with all of them, especially Renee.
Right.
I wrote 25,000 more words and a new ending.
Wow.
I did not know the ending when I started, and I'm very pleased with it now."
Wow.
And
Especially for somebody who outlines.
Yes. I mean, so this is the book that's currently on the bestseller list, the book that came out in October of last year.
Wow.
And this is what this 70-year-old author with 51 bestsellers behind him does. I love that.
I do too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before we wrap this up, we've talked a lot about John as a writer. So he does have some other big interests, some big passions. So
Sounds like golf is one of them.
well, it is, but that's not one I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
I thought I would just hit on 3 other things that I've heard him talk about quite a bit in interviews, or I've seen him discuss them in different sources, okay? So before the break, we discussed John's love of sports in general and baseball in particular. Well, he sometimes brings that passion into his work. If you read carefully, you'll notice that a lot of times there will be little sports references just in one of his normal books. But he actually produced and wrote the screenplay for the 2004 baseball movie Mickey, and his book Calico Joe is centered around the sport. So he's written some things that have been very focused around
I like that.
Yeah. His love of baseball has also been evident in some of the work John has done in his community. He coached both of his kids' baseball teams when they were young, and because baseball fields were scarce in their area, he actually funded a youth baseball complex that several sources cite as costing $3.8 million approximately. And I don't know, I could not find this. I'm not sure if he still holds this position. He might. But at least for a very long time, John served as the Little League Baseball Commissioner in his community.
Aww.
Yeah. Ty Grisham, John and Renee's son, played college baseball for the University of Virginia, by the way.
So he got to do it. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. John is also passionate about his work with the Innocence Project. According to the organization's website, quote, "For decades, John has used his platform as both a board member and an innocence ambassador to advocate alongside our clients, writing critical op-eds, sharing their stories, and advocating for real criminal legal reform." He actually created a nonfiction book, The Innocent Man, which was published in 2006, telling the story of Innocence Project client Ron Williamson's wrongful conviction and then ultimately his exoneration. In 2024, he published a book called Framed with Jim McCloskey, which tells 10 true stories of men and women who were wrongfully convicted.
Gosh, that's so scary.
Yeah, and the blurb goes on to say that he already has another book in the works. I watched that interview that John did with the host of Talking Volumes. It was over 90 minutes long, and I will tell you, a big chunk of it was focused on his concerns about legal issues, in particular, wrongful convictions. And John said in his Today Show interview with Willie Geist, quote, "It's fairly easy to send an innocent person to prison. It's almost impossible to get one out."
Golly, that's scary.
Yeah, you can tell it's on his heart.
Yeah.
Like this really is a cause that speaks to him. So finally, my last one that I'll mention, you'll remember John and Renee had 2 kids who are now grown. Tyler is a real estate and general litigation lawyer, and Shay is in the field of education. In one source, John did refer to her as a teacher, so that's what I'm assuming she does. All right. Now, the Grisham family is very careful about privacy, but we do know that John and Renee have some grandchildren with whom they love spending time. In one interview, John referred to himself as, quote, just about a full-time grandparent.
Oh, they're so sweet.
I know.
Armchair psychologist.
So this brings us to the armchair.
Where we just talk about how sweet he is and how wonderful.
Actually, I've got something not quite so lovely to talk about. So if you would like to wax poetic about John for a minute, please feel free to do so.
Now you've intrigued me. What have you got?
Well, this is a little disturbing, actually.
Oh, dear.
Okay. In the middle of all this research, remember I said we're going to come back to that series that John did for the middle grade level, the Theodore Boone Kid Lawyer.
Yeah.
Well, I was reading about that, thinking how much I loved it, right? Yeah. And in an article in Parade magazine that was published last November, John explained why he quit writing that series. And he basically said he stopped because the sales had declined so drastically. And then he offered this quote, "That whole middle grade market, ages 9 through 12, that's vanished in publishing, and that's very worrisome because you have the next generation of readers who aren't reading."
Yeah.
And so, that was concerning to me. That really hit me. And then I'm continuing to research, and I see him talking about other issues with, the readership. For example, remember we talked about that cycle in the beginning where it was like best-selling book followed by movie, best-selling book followed by movie. Well, here's another quote that came up somewhere in the midst of all this. Again, this is John. "I tell people this all the time. They don't believe me. I sold twice as many books before the internet because people were reading more. There were many more bookstores, 3,000 more bookstores in the U.S. before the internet. With cell phones and internet and social media, we're so wrapped up in our own little world, our attention spans are short, and we don't have time to sit down or won't take time to sit down and enjoy a good book. So it's very troubling."
Yeah, he's right.
That's it. I'm putting that in front of you. What, just to share your thoughts.
Well, he's right. It's like our world has become more convenient, but also more chaotic. We are spending so much time. I will say, I'll be the first one to say that I don't read nearly as much as I want to,
right,
or have time for. I mean, look at all these books. I'm never going to have time to read all of these. I would love to.
Right.
But in my case, sometimes I have to stop myself because I enjoy reading to such a point that I will do it to the exclusion of everything else. I had to cut myself off.
You get lost in it.
I get lost in it, and I won't take care of business. I'll do that later. I read the Sherry Frankie book in a day.
Right.
But that means I didn't do anything else that day.
Right.
So I love reading. I love all of that world, and I have to take myself away from it. I think I'm probably a weirdo, but most folks just don't have the time. They're so busy keeping up with their lives, keeping up with their kids. We have so much stuff that we're doing out of the house now that there's no time for that.
And I agree with you 100%, except that I will tell you, this hit me so hard. I'm an English major. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I taught reading and writing for all those years. And so it hurt my heart. And
I'm not saying it's a good thing.
Oh, I know. And it made me think about myself. I said at the beginning of this episode, I don't read like I used to. And a big part of that, I read all the time. But what I'm reading now is research for this podcast. I'm reading and writing like a maniac. But I'm not reading books.
Yes. And I will say that too. Since starting college last January, I have read so many textbooks. And the class I'm taking right now is seminars in current masters. And that's one of the things we're talking about is how being a good reader makes you a better writer. Because you're learning new vocabulary, you're expanding your thoughts, you're just learning from people who are good, and sometimes what not to do if they're not a good writer.
Absolutely, all of the above. Yeah. But what it made me think, to kind of this touches on the point you made a second ago as well. It made me realize if I were to time take a record or somehow clock all the time I waste, scrolling through social media or reading goofy things or, sometimes I need a new pair of socks and I've suddenly spent 30 minutes looking at all the sock options on Amazon.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. Some of the things that I do that does waste time. And so this motivated me to think about using my time more wisely. And I went into Goodreads. I hadn't done this in a while. I set a goal for myself for 2026, how many books I was going to read. Hadn't done that in a while.
Yeah.
And I decided, you know what? I can take small steps. When I wake up, I'm not the best sleeper. So sometimes if I wake up, instead of, listening to a podcast or trying to put myself back to sleep,
just start reading.
Yes. Like maybe I start reading a book, look for the opportunities. When and where can I read more? And the first book that I chose to read this year, my kids, thank goodness, are readers.
Oh, good.
And I use that term to talk about all three of them. I talk about Kennedy, Camden, and now Camden's married. Bree, I think of her as my kid too. So all three of them like to read. And so I chose a book that all three of them have been talking about.
What'd you choose?
Red Rising, which is not normally my kind of book necessarily. But I'm like, why not read something that, I could then discuss with them? So I think that John makes such an excellent point. It concerns me, and I do want people to be readers. I really want people to be readers. And I hope, I don't know what we can do about it.
Maybe you can do a little TikTok or something about your opinion on the book, like Candy's book list, and maybe we can get people to read with you.
I like this. We may not be able to flesh this out right here in this moment, but we, through our community, our Facebook community, or some other,
you can start your own little book club.
We could. I like the idea. We'll play with this, but in the meantime, we have control over ourselves. We can't control society or anybody else's moves, but we have control of ourselves.
Right.
And I have decided I'm going to read more for enjoyment, not just for my work.
Yeah, I want to do that too.
This is kind of
our work.
It's kind of our work. Yeah. All right. Any last thoughts about John Grisham before we close?
Well, I think we need to, at some point, if we do this book club, read one of his books.
Absolutely.
Because my goodness, what an inspiration of just, I like that he is so disciplined, and what I'm learning in school, he's hitting all of the marks of just the discipline, and he's a plotter, not a pantser, which means you write by the seat of your pants. So he's outlining everything and just making everything conducive to the writing of the work. So I don't know. It's very inspiring.
It is very inspiring. Clearly, we are ending with a huge cheers to John Grisham.
And his latest bestseller. And happy birthday.
And happy birthday. Cheers to you, John Grisham.
Cheers.
If you love what we do, please rate and review our show or become a supporter through Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. Whether a single gift or recurring monthly donation, your support is what allows us to keep the tea brewing.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast app or the Scandal Water Podcast YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Show notes are available at our website, scandalwaterpodcast.com, where you can also access the merch store and more.
This episode was executive produced by Candy Thomas, that's me, and Ashley Raymer Brown,
that's me.
It was researched and written by Candy Thomas and edited by Ashley Raymer Brown.
A special thank you to Josh Martin, who wrote, composed, and performed the Scandal Water theme and other music. Matt C. Adams, who created the artwork, and Joshua Reith, who designed our website and provides ongoing technical support.
As a reminder, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes. The thoughts and opinions of the host during each episode of Scandal Water are their own and do not reflect the opinions of any future guests, advertisers, or clearly professional psychologists. Thanks for listening.